The new law has a section called the no tax on overtime. We know it doesn't really work like that. This is actually a deduction. Our read of it at least is it's a deduction that is below the line, so it does not contribute to AGI or does not take away from AGI. It's not part of your standard or itemized deductions. It's one of these below the line deductions like QBI, like the new senior deduction, the TIPS one, and the auto interest one. This one starts in 2025, so overtime pay in 2025 counts, and 2028 is the last year. So 2029 onward, we don't know, but right now it's not in the law. So 2025 to 2028 only. It is a $25,000 maximum deduction for joint filers. Everybody else, it's $12,500, unless it's married filing separate. If it's married filing separate, it's completely excluded. You don't get to take this one married filing separate. Let me show you how we enter it in Holistiplan. So within the wages line in scenario analysis, there is a line called overtime income, and that's what triggers the deduction farther down, which we'll get to. These are nonsensical numbers because these people have overtime pay and no normal pay, but anyway, they've got $60,000 of overtime each. And that's $120,000, which is less than the phase out. So let's talk about the phase out. The phase out, first of all, let me just show you. Here it is. In this other deductions in QBI section, you open that up and you'll see overtime deduction. And this is a married couple, so $25,000 is the max. It will start to phase out when MAGI, modified adjusted gross income, hits $300,000. Now the MAGI in this case is your AGI, and you add back the foreign earned income exclusion, the foreign housing exclusion. That's your MAGI. So it starts phasing out at $300,000. It finishes phasing out at $550,000. It's a pretty wide phase out, wider than we've seen elsewhere in this new law. For all the other filers, the not joint filers, it starts phasing out at $150,000 and it finishes phasing out at $275,000. And I'm going to show you that in range calc. But it's interesting to me that this one is a much wider phase out range, which means you're going to see it's not as tall, it's not as impactful within range calc as far as adjusting the incremental tax cost. So what range calc is doing, just as a reminder, is you're taking your original scenario, which I showed on screen just there, and what range calc does is it adds $1,000 of income at a time and then reruns the entire tax calculation, and then it shows us what's the incremental tax cost as you add more and more income. And so you can see here, add a little income, nothing happens. They're in the 12% bracket. Oh, boom, a little more, 22% bracket. Here, though, we start to see that phase out of that overtime deduction. And because it's such a wide phase out, it doesn't make a very tall impact or a very huge impact on the incremental tax cost. In this case, 2.4% in the 24% bracket, 3.2 in the 32% bracket, 3.5 in the 35% bracket. That makes sense, by the way. We're phasing out 10 cents on the dollar of the deduction. And so 10 cents on the dollar, well, you're in the 24% bracket. So 10 cents of lost deduction cost you 2.4%. That's what's happening behind the scenes on this calculation. But anyway, you can see wide phase out, which again is in contrast to some of the other phase outs we've seen. All right, so what's the action plan for advisors? What's the loophole? How do we make sure that I shift a bunch of income over into overtime versus normal pay? I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. We'll see like what the rules are, but they haven't codified what the rules actually are. So let's see if I can find it. Here it is. The Secretary shall issue such regulations or other guidance as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the purposes of this section, including regulations or other guidance to prevent abuse of the deduction allowed by this section. So the original House bill had a lot more language around what was in or out. This bill, the final one, is just like, the IRS is going to figure this out and make sure we don't cheat. And so I'm guessing you're not going to be able to play games and give yourself a bunch of deductions or give yourself a bunch of overtime pay that you otherwise wouldn't have had just to get this deduction.